The sun hadn't yet broken the horizon when Lieutenant Kenna Blackwood settled into position at the 1,000-yard line. The desert air hung cold and still, that brief window before the Afghan heat turned breathing into labor. She pressed her cheek against the stock of her Barrett M82, feeling the weapon's familiar weight distribute across her frame. 5'4", 123 pounds. The rifle outweighed her by a factor that made the quartermasters laugh every time she requisitioned one. She'd stopped caring about their laughter 3 years ago. Through the scope, the target downrange appeared as a dark blur against lighter sand. 1,200 yards, 3/4 of a mile. The kind of shot that separated pretenders from professionals. The kind of shot that had earned her the call sign no one wanted to say to her face. Reaper. She controlled her breathing. In for 4 counts. Hold for 2. Out for 4. Between heartbeats, in that microsecond of absolute stillness, she pressed the trigger. The Barrett roared. 50 caliber thunder rolled across the range. Downrange, the target's center mass exploded in a spray of shredded paper and dust. Kenna worked the bolt, ejected the spent casing, chambered another round. The brass hit the sand with a sound like a small bell. She fired again, and again, and again. 10 shots, 10 hits, each one clustered within a 6-inch diameter at 1,200 yards. The kind of grouping that shouldn't be possible with a 50 caliber. The kind of grouping that made certain men very, very uncomfortable. Behind her, she heard boots crunching on gravel. Multiple sets. Heavy footfalls that carried the particular rhythm of men who wanted you to know they were coming. Men who wanted you to feel their presence like a hand on your shoulder. She didn't turn around. Range is for real operators, sweetheart. The voice carried the growl of a career non-com. 30-something, probably deployed 4, 5 times. The kind of man who'd watched standards change and didn't like what he was seeing. Kenna ejected her magazine, cleared the chamber, set the Barrett down with the care you'd give a sleeping child. Only then did she turn. Staff Sergeant Colt Draven stood 15 feet back, arms crossed over a chest that looked like it had been carved from granite, quarried in a gym. 38 years old, according to the files she'd memorized. 3 deployments to Iraq, 2 to Afghanistan, Bronze Star, Purple Heart, exemplary service record right up until the moment he'd been passed over for gunnery sergeant twice. Behind him stood 4 more Marines, younger, harder, the kind of men who measured their worth in how much weight they could bench and how loudly they could prove it. Didn't know the range had operating hours, Staff Sergeant, Kenna said. Her voice carried flat and even across the space between them. No inflection, no challenge, just statement of fact. It doesn't. Draven took 3 steps forward. His shadow fell across her gear bag. But there's an understanding. Real warriors train here, not diversity checkboxes playing dress-up in Daddy's uniform. The 4 Marines behind him laughed. The sound came out forced, like they were following a script they'd rehearsed. Kenna held Draven's gaze for 3 seconds. Then she turned back to her rifle, began breaking it down for transport. Stock separation, barrel removal, each movement precise and practiced. The kind of muscle memory that comes from 10,000 repetitions. Hey, Draven's voice hardened. I'm talking to you. I heard you, Staff Sergeant. Then maybe you should listen. Kenna continued her breakdown routine. Barrel into the case, receiver assembly next. The Barrett M82 broke down into 6 major components. She could do it in under 90 seconds with her eyes closed. Had done it, in fact, during Hell Week, when the instructors made her prove she could maintain her weapon even after 72 hours without sleep. One of the younger Marines, Corporal Wade Maddox, according to his name tape, stepped forward. He wore his cover low over his eyes and moved with the swagger of someone who'd never been truly tested. 26 years old, 2 deployments, no combat decorations. Range rules, Maddox said, say you gotta police your brass. Kenna glanced at the dozen spent casings scattered in the sand around her position. Standard protocol. She'd planned to collect them after securing her weapon. I'm aware of the rules, Corporal. Then maybe you should follow them. Maddox's boots shot out, connected with her gear bag. The bag tumbled across the sand, spilling its contents. Cleaning kit, ammunition, her spotting scope. The scope, a Leopold Mark IV, $4,000 of precision optics, bounced twice and came to rest against a rock. Even from 6 feet away, Kenna could see the lens had spiderwebbed into a constellation of cracks. The laughter died. Kenna stood slowly, 5'4", to Maddox's 6'2", 123 pounds, facing 220 of Marine Corps muscle. By every physical measure, this wasn't a fair fight. Maddox seemed to realize it at the same time the others did. His grin widened. That scope cost 4,000 taxpayer dollars, Kenna said. You'll pay for it. Yeah? Maddox took a step closer, put his hand on her shoulder. Not quite a shove, not quite a push, just enough pressure to establish dominance. Make me. What happened next took exactly 1.5 seconds. Kenna's left hand came up, caught Maddox's wrist, rotated it outward in a textbook wrist lock that hyperextended his elbow and brought him up on his toes. Her right hand drove forward, palm strike to his solar plexus that knocked the air from his lungs. She swept his legs, rode him down, planted his face in the sand hard enough to split his lip. Draven moved. Credit to him, he actually had combat reflexes. His hand went to his sidearm even as he charged forward. Kenna released Maddox, pivoted inside Draven's reach. Her elbow caught him in the floating rib. Not hard enough to break it, she still had some measure of restraint, but hard enough to fold him sideways. She hooked his ankle, used his own momentum to put him on the ground next to Maddox. The other 3 Marines rushed her together. Better tactics, worse execution. The first one, Private First Class Kellen Nash, according to the name tape she glimpsed, swung wild. Kenna ducked under it, drove her fist into his kidney, pushed him stumbling past her into the second Marine. They went down together in a tangle of limbs and profanity. The 5th Marine, Lance Corporal Brett Hagen, actually showed some training. He came in with a proper stance, hands up, bouncing on the balls of his feet like he'd done some boxing. Kenna didn't give him time to set. She closed distance, caught his leading hand, pulled him off balance, and used a simple hip throw to put him on his back. The air went out of him with a sound like a punctured tire. 5 Marines, 6 seconds, all of them on the ground. Kenna stood in the center of them, breathing steady, not even winded. Her hands remained loose at her sides. No fists, no aggressive posture, just ready. Draven pushed himself up on his elbows, blood leaking from the corner of his mouth. His eyes carried something new now. Not respect, men like him didn't grant respect easily, but recognition, the understanding that he'd badly misjudged his opponent. You just assaulted 5 Marines, he said. Self-defense, Kenna replied. I'm sure the surveillance footage from those 3 cameras, she pointed at the range tower, will back that up. She walked to her gear bag, began collecting the scattered contents. The broken scope went in last. $4,000 she'd probably never see reimbursed. Behind her, the Marines were getting to their feet, dusting sand from their uniforms, not looking at each other. The kind of embarrassed silence that follows a beating you didn't see coming. Lieutenant Blackwood. The new voice came from the access road. Kenna turned, already knowing what she'd see. Major General Thaddeus Kane stood beside a Humvee, flanked by 2 aides and a captain from the Provost Marshal's office. 54 years old. Silver hair cut high and tight. Dress uniform pressed sharp enough to draw blood. Chest full of ribbons that told the story of a distinguished career. Bronze Star, Silver Star, Legion of Merit. The kind of officer who'd never heard the word no from anyone below the rank of colonel. He walked forward with the measured pace of a man who knew everyone would wait for him. His eyes moved from Kenna to the 5 Marines, cataloging the scene with the efficiency of someone trained to assess tactical situations. Sir, Kenna came to attention. Proper military bearing, despite the sand on her uniform and the adrenaline still singing in her blood. Kane stopped 10 feet away, close enough to make his presence felt, far enough to maintain command distance. His gaze settled on her face and something moved behind his eyes. Not anger, something colder, calculation. I just watched you assault 5 of my Marines, Lieutenant. Sir, if you review the surveillance footage, I don't need surveillance footage. His voice carried the quiet certainty of absolute authority. I know what I saw. You attacked 5 men who were simply questioning your presence on a range they use for essential training. They destroyed government property, sir. $4,000 worth of optics that... Watch yourself, Lieutenant. Kane took 3 steps closer. Now he stood inside her personal space, using his height, 6 feet exactly, to loom over her. You're in my area of operations. These are my Marines, and you just made a very serious mistake. Kenna held his gaze, didn't step back, didn't look away. With respect, sir, watch your men. The silence that followed stretched like razor wire pulled tight. One of Kane's aides, a captain whose name tape read Morris, cleared his throat. Sir, perhaps we should review the... Captain Morris will escort you to the command post, Kane interrupted, still looking at Kenna. You're confined to quarters pending investigation. You will surrender your weapons and all ammunition to the armory. You will not communicate with your chain of command without supervision. You will not leave your assigned barracks without express written permission from my office. Is that understood? Sir, I'm assigned to DEVGRU. My commanding officer is not here. I am. Kane smiled. The expression never reached his eyes. Your Navy SEAL credentials don't mean a damn thing in my base, Lieutenant. Here, you follow my rules. And my rules say you're done. He turned to Draven, who was now standing, wiping blood from his mouth with the back of his hand. Staff Sergeant, you and your men report to medical for evaluation. Full documentation of injuries. Then I want written statements from each of you detailing this unprovoked assault. Sir, it wasn't, Maddox started. It was unprovoked, Kane said. The words came out flat and final. Understood? Draven met Kane's eyes. Something passed between them. Some understanding that Kenna couldn't quite read, but could feel the weight of. Understood, sir. Kane nodded once. Then he walked back to his Humvee without another word. Didn't look back. Didn't need to. His authority had been established. His will had been imposed. The encounter was over because he said it was over. Captain Morris approached Kenna with the uncomfortable expression of a man carrying out orders he didn't particularly agree with. Lieutenant, if you'll come with me. Kenna secured her Barrett case, slung her gear bag over her shoulder despite its broken strap, followed Morris to a waiting vehicle. As she walked, she felt 5 sets of eyes tracking her movement, Draven and his squad, watching her leave. Their expressions carried confusion now, as if they couldn't quite figure out how a simple harassment had escalated into something so much larger. Welcome to the club, Kenna thought. The ride to the command post took 12 minutes. Neither Kenna nor Morris spoke. He drove with the careful attention of someone navigating a minefield. She stared out the window at the sprawl of Camp Leatherneck, watching Marines and sailors go about their morning routines. PT formations running in formation, supply convoys staging for departure, helicopter rotors spinning up on distant pads. 17,000 personnel on this base, one of the largest coalition facilities in Afghanistan, home to everything from infantry battalions to aviation squadrons to special operations units. A small city built from HESCO barriers and determination, squatting in the desert like a challenge to the Taliban. And somewhere in this city, a general had just decided Kenna Blackwood was a problem that needed to be eliminated. Morris pulled up to a long, low building that served as transient officer housing. Second door on the left, ma'am. I'll need your sidearm and rifle. Kenna handed over her Sig Sauer P226. relinquished the barrack case, watched Morris lock both in the vehicle's weapons rack. "Someone will bring you 3 meals a day," he said. "Latrine privileges twice daily, supervised. If you need anything else, there's a guard posted outside." "A guard? Those are the general's orders, ma'am." Kenna nodded, walked to the second door on the left. It wasn't locked. Inside, the room measured maybe 10 by 12. Bunk, desk, locker, window that looked out onto a gravel yard and more temporary buildings. The same quarters 1,000 junior officers had occupied before her. The same quarters that were now her prison. She set her gear bag on the bunk, sat down beside it. For the first time since the range, she allowed herself to really think about what had just happened. The harassment had been deliberate, calculated. Draven and his men hadn't just stumbled onto her training session. They'd come looking for her, with a general's blessing, apparently, or at least his protection. But why? She'd been at Leatherneck for 6 days, arrived as part of a SEAL team tasked with training Afghan special forces. Low-profile assignment, nothing that should have attracted command attention. She kept to herself, did her job, stayed out of the Marine Corps' business. Except someone had made her their business. Kenna pulled her gear bag close, reached into the outer pocket where she kept spare magazines and cleaning supplies. Her fingers found the small object she'd hidden there 3 days ago, wrapped in an oily rag. A USB drive. She pulled it out, turned it over in her palm. The kind of generic flash drive you could buy at any electronics store. Nothing special about it except what it contained. And what it contained had gotten 2 people killed in the last month. 3 days ago, a Force Recon Marine named Bridger Holt had shoved this drive into her hand during a midnight meeting behind the motor pool. He'd been sweating despite the cool night air. His eyes had moved constantly, scanning for threats that only he could see. "Don't open this here," he'd said. "Don't plug it into any military network. Don't tell anyone you have it." "Then why give it to me?" "Because you're SEAL, you're outside the normal chain of command. And because I've been watching you. You don't kiss ass. You don't back down. And you sure as hell don't look the other way when something's wrong." "What's on it?" "Proof," Holt had said, "that good men are dying because of bad officers. That American weapons are ending up in Taliban hands. That someone very high up is trading blood for money." He'd walked away before she could ask more questions. Disappeared into the shadows between buildings like a ghost. Kenna had spent the next 3 days trying to decide what to do with the drive. She had no computer that wasn't connected to military networks, no way to verify Holt's claims without potentially exposing herself, and no real reason to trust a Marine she'd met exactly once. Until this morning. Until General Kane had shown up personally to witness her assault on 5 Marines who'd been sent to provoke exactly that response. Kenna wrapped the USB drive back in its rag, tucked it deep in her gear bag. Whatever was on that drive, it was important enough that Kane wanted her discredited, confined, and isolated before she could act on it. Which meant Holt had been telling the truth. Which meant Kenna was sitting on evidence of something big enough to mobilize a general. A knock on the door interrupted her thoughts. Not the sharp rap of military courtesy, something softer, almost hesitant. "Come in," she said. The door opened. A Navy commander stepped through, and Kenna immediately came to attention. Commander Hewitt Granger, 48 years old, SEAL Team 8 commanding officer. Her direct superior and one of the few men in special operations who'd actively supported her assignment to DevGru. He wore fatigues instead of his usual khakis, which meant he'd come straight from something operational. "As you were, Reaper." He closed the door behind him, moved to the window, looked out, checking sight lines with the practiced eye of someone who'd spent decades assuming every space was hostile territory. Satisfied no one could see in, he turned back to her. "Sir, I can explain." "I saw the footage," Granger interrupted. "All 3 camera angles. Those Marines came looking for a fight. You gave them one. Textbook self-defense." "Then why am I confined to quarters?" Because General Kane is pushing for a court-martial, assault, conduct unbecoming, disobeying the lawful order of a superior officer. He's got Senator Braxton, chair of the Armed Services Committee, on speed dial. He's making noise about Navy SEALs undermining Marine Corps authority, about female operators being a liability in combat zones. Kenna felt something cold settle in her stomach. He's using me as a political football. He's burying you. Granger crossed his arms. And between you and me, I think that was always the plan. Those Marines were sent to provoke you. Kane was there to witness it. Captain Morris from the Provost Marshal's office was standing by to process your detention. This was coordinated, Reaper, which means someone wanted you off the board. Why? Granger was quiet for a long moment. When he spoke again, his voice had dropped to barely above a whisper. 3 weeks ago, a Force Recon Marine named Sergeant Kyle Brennan started asking questions about supply convoy routes. He noticed equipment that was supposed to be destroyed in combat was showing up in after-action photos from Taliban attacks. Same serial numbers, same modifications, our gear being used against us. What happened to him? KIA, Taliban ambush. His convoy got hit by an IED, then small arms fire. 8 killed, including Brennan. Real tragedy. Granger's tone made it clear he didn't believe in tragedy. Except the IED was American. M67 fragmentation grenades, daisy-chained together. The kind of device we teach to Allied forces. And the Taliban don't usually hit supply convoys that hard unless they know exactly what's in them. Kenna thought about the USB drive in her bag. Someone tipped them off. Someone set them up. Granger moved away from the window, reached into his pocket, pulled out a cell phone. Not military issue. A civilian smartphone with a cracked screen and no service provider logo. A friend of Brennan's contacted me 2 days ago. Gunnery Sergeant Bridger Holt. Said Brennan had given him evidence before he died. Said he needed help, but couldn't trust his chain of command. I told him to find someone outside the Marine Corps command structure, someone who wouldn't be easily intimidated. He found me. And now you're confined to quarters, facing court-martial, about to be shipped home in disgrace. Granger held out the phone. This is encrypted, military grade, can't be traced back to me or you. Someone wants to contact you tonight. 2300 hours, maintenance shed behind the motor pool. Kenna took the phone, felt its weight in her palm. Who? Holt. He says it's urgent, says Kane is moving up his timeline. Granger headed for the door, paused with his hand on the knob. Officially, I can't protect you from a general. I don't have that kind of juice. But unofficially, I didn't see you leave this building. I didn't give you that phone. And I sure as hell don't know anything about a meeting behind the motor pool. Sir, if I get caught, you won't. Granger's expression hardened. Because you're a SEAL, and SEALs don't get caught. He left without another word. Kenna sat on her bunk, holding the encrypted phone, feeling the weight of decisions she hadn't yet made. Outside her window, the sun had fully risen. Camp Leatherneck was waking up. Another day in the war. Another day of Marines and sailors executing their missions, trusting that their leadership had their best interests at heart. She thought about her father, Daniel Blackwood, forest ranger, Montana backcountry expert, the man who'd taught her how to track deer through snow and read weather in cloud patterns, who disappeared into the wilderness when she was 16 years old. Search and rescue found his truck at a trailhead, found his pack 2 miles in, never found him. The official report said he'd fallen, hit his head, wandered off disoriented, succumbed to exposure in a late-season snowstorm, a tragic accident. Kenna had never believed it. Her father knew those mountains better than he knew his own house. He didn't make mistakes. He didn't get lost. And he sure as hell didn't wander off disoriented. She'd been carrying that doubt for 11 years, carrying the certainty that something else had happened, that someone had made sure Daniel Blackwood didn't come home. And now General Thaddeus Kane had just made a very specific threat, had looked at her with eyes that held too much knowledge, had moved to neutralize her before she'd even done anything worth neutralizing. The USB drive in her bag felt like it weighed 1,000 pounds. Kenna checked the encrypted phone. No messages yet. Just a clock counting down to 2,300 hours. 9 hours and 17 minutes from now. She had two choices. Stay in this room. Follow orders. Let the military justice system run its course. Hope that someone up the chain would recognize the truth and clear her name. Or trust her instincts. Meet Holt. Find out what was on that USB drive. And understand that once she made that choice, there was no going back. Her father had spent his last days investigating something important enough to make him disappear. She'd never known what, had never been able to ask. Maybe now she'd get her answer. Kenna stood, walked to her gear bag, pulled out a change of clothes, black long-sleeve shirt, dark pants, soft-soled boots, the kind of outfit that lets you move through shadows without being seen. She had 9 hours to prepare, 9 hours to plan an infiltration of her own base, 9 hours to decide if she was willing to throw away everything she'd worked for, her career, her honor, her freedom, on the word of a Force Recon Marine she barely knew. Outside her window, a formation of Marines ran past, chanting a cadence about killing and dying. Their voices rose and fell in perfect unison. The sound of discipline, of brotherhood, of absolute faith in the mission and the men beside you. Kenna thought about Staff Sergeant Colt Draven and his squad, about how quickly they'd move when Kane gave them permission, about how their harassment had been coordinated, deliberate, designed to provoke exactly the response she'd given. And she thought about General Thaddeus Kane, about the cold calculation in his eyes, about how he'd been waiting at the range, ready to witness her assault, about how easily he'd assume control of her fate. Someone very high up is trading blood for money, Holt had said. 2,300 hours couldn't come fast enough. 2,300 hours came wrapped in darkness, thick enough to taste. Kenna stood at her window, watching the guard posted outside her quarters. Young private, maybe 22. He'd been there since 1800, shifting his weight every few minutes, checking his watch, clearly wishing he was anywhere else. She'd spent the last 4 hours memorizing his patterns. Every 12 minutes, he walked a circuit around the building. Took him exactly 90 seconds. During that window, the front door was unwatched. 90 seconds to slip out, cross 50 yards of open ground, and disappear into the shadows between the maintenance buildings. Tight, but doable. At 22:58, the private started his circuit. Kenna was already at the door, dressed in black, the encrypted phone in her pocket. She opened the door slowly. No squeaking hinges. She'd oiled them at 2100 with hand sanitizer from her personal kit. Stepped out into night air that smelled like diesel fuel and dust. Crossed the open ground in a low run. Her boots made whisper-soft contact with gravel. Behind her, she heard the private's footsteps continuing around the building's far corner. She cleared the 50 yards in 14 seconds. Pressed herself against the wall of a storage shed. Waited. No shouts, no alarms, no running feet. She moved deeper into the base, using the skills they drilled into her during 3 years of SEAL training. Stay in shadows. Move during mechanical noise, generators, vehicles, helicopters. Never silhouette yourself against light sources. Be a ghost. The motor pool sat at the southern edge of Camp Leatherneck, a sprawling collection of maintenance bays in vehicle storage. During the day, it ran 24/7, mechanics keeping the war machine running. At night, it operated on skeleton crew. Most of the work happened in the lit bays. The maintenance shed behind the main building stayed dark. Kenna approached from the east, using a row of parked Humvees as cover. Overhead, stars burned with the intensity you only found in desert skies, far from city lights. A 3/4 moon painted everything in shades of silver and black. The shed was a prefab metal structure, maybe 20 by 30. No windows, one door, no external lighting. She circled it once, checking approaches, identifying exits, found nothing unusual. At 2300 exactly, she tried the door. Unlocked. She slipped inside. The interior smelled like motor oil and old coffee. Darkness pressed against her eyes. She stood still, letting her vision adjust, every sense reaching out, listening for breathing, for the subtle sounds of another human presence. "Close the door, Lieutenant." The voice came from her right, male, controlled, the kind of voice that had spent years learning not to show fear. Kenna closed the door, pulled out the encrypted phone, used its dim screen light to illuminate the space. Gunnery Sergeant Bridger Holt sat on an overturned bucket back against the wall. 42 years old according to his service record. Force Recon, 3 deployments, multiple commendations. The kind of Marine who made it look easy because he'd done it so many times, the hard parts became muscle memory. Except now he looked like a man who hadn't slept in a week. Dark circles under his eyes, 3 days of beard growth, hands that trembled slightly despite his attempt to keep them steady. "You came," he said. "Commander Granger said it was urgent." "It is." Holt stood, walked to a workbench, pulled a laptop from underneath a tarp. Military issue, but the case had been pried open. Internal components modified. "I'm guessing you got the USB drive I gave you." Kenna nodded. "Don't plug it into any military system. They're monitoring network traffic. The moment that drive touches a connected computer, they'll know." He opened the laptop. "This machine is air-gapped, no wireless capability, no network card, completely isolated, safe." He held out his hand. Kenna pulled the USB drive from her pocket, handed it over, watched as Holt plugged it in, fingers moving across the keyboard with practiced efficiency. The screen filled with files, dozens of them, photos, spreadsheets, scanned documents, video clips. "Kyle Brennan spent 6 months collecting this," Holt said. "Started when he noticed equipment serial numbers showing up in Taliban hands. M4 rifles we'd supposedly destroyed. A T4 rocket launchers that were listed as expended. Ammunition that never made it to Afghan National Army supplies." He opened a photo. It showed a Taliban fighter holding an M4 carbine. The image quality was good enough to read the serial number stamped on the receiver. "That rifle was reported destroyed 3 months ago. Combat loss during a firefight in Sangin, except here it is, in perfect condition, in enemy hands." Holt clicked through more photos, more weapons, more serial numbers. Kyle started tracking the pattern. Every time equipment went missing, it happened during convoys run by a specific unit. 2nd Battalion, 7th Marines. Staff Sergeant Colt Draven's company. Kenna felt pieces clicking together. "Draven's the one who came after me this morning." "That wasn't random, Lieutenant. That was orders." Holt opened a video file. Security camera footage from a guard post. Grainy, night vision green, but clear enough to see figures moving in the darkness. Timestamp read August 23rd, 2011, 3 weeks ago. The video showed a convoy of vehicles pulling into a staging area. Marines unloading crates from military trucks. Other men, clearly not military, wearing civilian clothes, loading those same crates into pickup trucks. "Watch the timeline," Holt said. The timestamp jumped forward 3 hours. The civilian trucks were gone. The military convoy was loading different crates, these ones marked with proper manifest labels. "They're swapping cargo," Kenna said, "taking military equipment, replacing it with decoys. By the time anyone checks the serial numbers, the real gear is long gone. And the manifests all check out. The paperwork is perfect because someone high up is signing off on it." Holt clicked to another file. A spreadsheet. Columns of data tracking dates, equipment types, quantities, values. Kyle estimated they've moved $47 million worth of weapons and ammunition in the last 18 months. The number hit like a fist. 47 million. Enough to equip a small army. enough to get a lot of Americans killed. "Who's running it?" Kenna asked. Holt opened another file. More security footage. This one showed a figure in Marine Corps dress uniform inspecting the convoy operation. The camera angle wasn't great, but the man's face caught enough light to be identifiable. Major General Thaddeus Kane. "Jesus," Kenna breathed. Kyle figured it out 2 weeks before he died. Traced the approval signatures back through the supply chain. Every major transfer required flag officer authorization, and every authorization came from Kane's office. Holt's jaw tightened. "I think Kyle tried to report it. I think that's why his convoy got ambushed. Someone tipped off the Taliban, told them exactly where to hit and when. You think Kane had him killed. I think Kyle is dead, and his investigation died with him, until I recovered his files." Holt closed the laptop. "And now they know someone has the evidence. They just don't know who yet." "They will after this morning," Kenna said. "Kane watched me put down 5 Marines in 6 seconds. He confined me to quarters, isolated me from my command. If he didn't know I was a threat before, he does now. Which is why you need to leave Camp Leatherneck. Tonight. Get this evidence to someone outside Kane's reach. Someone at CENTCOM, or the Pentagon, or I'm not running." The words came out harder than Kenna intended. If Kane is selling weapons to the Taliban, he needs to answer for it. Here, now, before anyone else dies. "You can't take down a general alone, Lieutenant." "I'm not alone." Kenna pulled out the encrypted phone. "Commander Granger knows. You know. How many others in your unit suspect something's wrong?" Holt was quiet for a long moment. "Maybe 5 guys I trust with this. Marines who served with Kyle, who knew he wasn't crazy when he started asking questions. Get them together. We need to catch Kane in the act. Document everything. Build a case so airtight he can't wiggle out of it." Kenna thought through the logistics. "When's the next weapons transfer?" 3 days. September 18th. There's a convoy scheduled to move ammunition to Forward Operating Base Jackson. That's the cover story. Reality is, half those munitions will get diverted to a Taliban buyer. Where does the handoff happen? That's the problem. Kyle never figured out the exact location. He knew the convoys left Camp Leatherneck, but they'd go dark for several hours before arriving at their supposed destination. No GPS tracking during that window. No communications. Complete radio silence. Kenna studied the map in her mind. Camp Leatherneck to FOB Jackson was roughly 60 miles through hostile territory. Plenty of places to make a clandestine exchange without anyone noticing. "We'll have to follow the convoy," she said. "Off-road, stay out of sight, document the transfer when it happens. They'll have counter-surveillance. Draven's team knows fieldcraft. If they spot us, they won't." Kenna met Holt's eyes. "Get your people. I'll get mine. We meet back here in 48 hours with a solid plan. And Sergeant, this stays off all communication channels. No phones, no radios, no digital footprint, face-to-face only." Holt nodded slowly. "You know if this goes wrong, we're all done. Court-martial at minimum. Prison time more likely. Kane has connections all the way to the Senate Armed Services Committee. If this goes right, we stop a traitor from getting more Americans killed." Kenna turned toward the door. "I'll take those odds." She slipped back into the darkness, retracing her route through Camp Leatherneck. The return journey took longer. She had to wait out 2 foot patrols and a roving Humvee before she could cross back to her quarters. The guard was still on his circuit when she slipped through the door at 0020. Inside, she stripped off her dark clothes, changed back into her PT gear, and climbed into her bunk. Her mind was racing too fast for sleep, but she forced herself to lie still, to control her breathing, to present the appearance of rest. Because in 48 hours, she was going to war with a general. The next morning arrived with someone pounding on her door at 0530. Kenna was already awake, already dressed, already expecting trouble. Captain Morris stood outside, looking even more uncomfortable than yesterday. Behind him stood two MPs and a Navy captain she didn't recognize. "Lieutenant Blackwood," Morris said, "Captain Winters is from the Judge Advocate General's Corps. He needs to speak with you." Captain Winters stepped forward, 50-something, silver hair, the kind of face that had spent a career delivering bad news to people who didn't want to hear it. "Lieutenant, I'm here to inform you that General Kane has formally filed charges. Assault, conduct unbecoming an officer, disobeying lawful orders. The Article 32 hearing is scheduled for 6 days from now." 6 days. That was 3 days after the convoy operation. Kane was keeping her locked down until after the transfer happened. "I understand, sir," Kenna said. "You're entitled to legal representation. I can assign you a defense counsel from my office, or you can request—" "I'll represent myself, sir." Winters frowned. "I'd advise against that, Lieutenant. These are serious charges. You're looking at a bad conduct discharge and potential prison time." "Noted, sir. I still decline counsel." Winters exchanged a glance with Morris. "Very well. You'll receive the charge sheet and discovery materials within 24 hours. If you change your mind about representation—" "I won't, sir." After they left, Kenna sat on her bunk and thought through her next moves. She had 48 hours before meeting Holt again. 48 hours to figure out how to get her SEAL team involved without compromising them. The encrypted phone buzzed in her pocket. A text message. Unknown number. "North Perimeter Fence, Water Tower Access Road, 1400 hours. Come alone." Kenna stared at the message. It could be a trap. Could be Kane's people trying to catch her violating her confinement. Could be a dozen different kinds of dangerous. She texted back, "Who is this?" The reply came immediately. "Someone who knew your father." Kenna's breath caught. She read the message 3 times, looking for deception, finding only those 5 words that hit harder than any punch she'd ever taken. "Someone who knew your father." Daniel Blackwood, missing for 11 years, presumed dead, never found. At 13:55, Kenna slipped out of her quarters using the same technique as the night before. The guards' patrol patterns hadn't changed. 90-second window. She made it look easy. The North Perimeter Fence marked the edge of Camp Leatherneck's footprint. Beyond it lay nothing but Afghan desert stretching to the horizon. The Water Tower Access Road was a dirt track used by maintenance crews, rarely patrolled, mostly forgotten. A man waited beside a Humvee parked in the tower's shadow. 60-something, civilian clothes, weathered face that had seen too much sun in too many hard years. He watched Kenna approach with eyes that assessed threats automatically, instinctively. "Lieutenant Blackwood," he said, American accent, Midwest maybe. "Thanks for coming. You said you knew my father." "I did." The man pulled out a wallet, flipped it open. FBI credentials. Special Agent Marcus Vance. "I worked with Daniel Blackwood 15 years ago. He was helping us investigate weapons trafficking along the Montana-Canada border." 15 years ago. Kenna would have been 12. She remembered her father taking long trips into the backcountry, sometimes for days. He'd always said it was ranger business. She'd never questioned it. "My father was a forest ranger," she said. "Your father was also an FBI confidential informant. He knew those mountains better than anyone, knew all the smuggling routes, helped us bust 3 major trafficking rings between 1994 and 1996. Vance's expression softened. "He was a good man. When he disappeared, we investigated, found evidence suggesting his death wasn't accidental." The world seemed to tilt slightly. What evidence? His truck had been moved. Someone drove it to that trailhead and staged it to look like he'd hiked in. His pack was placed 2 miles up the trail, not dropped naturally. And his emergency beacon, the one he always carried, was turned off manually before he disappeared. Vance paused. "Daniel didn't get lost, Lieutenant. He was killed. And we believe it was connected to the trafficking investigation." Kenna's hands clenched into fists. "Who killed him?" "We don't know for certain, But the investigation led to an Army captain named Thaddeus Kane. He was running a supply depot at Fort Carson, Colorado. We suspected he was diverting weapons to the same trafficking networks your father was helping us bust. Before we could build a case, witnesses started disappearing. Evidence went missing. The investigation collapsed. Kane. The name tasted like poison. He made general after that, climbed the ranks, got powerful friends in Washington, became untouchable. Vance pulled out a folder, handed it to her. I've spent 15 years waiting for another chance at him. When I heard he was under investigation by one of his own Marines, I started paying attention. When that Marine ended up dead, I knew Kane was active again. Kenna opened the folder. Inside were photos, documents, timelines, everything connecting Kane to her father's death. Everything proving what she'd suspected for 11 years, but could never prove. Why tell me this now? She asked. Because you're planning something. I can see it in your eyes. Same look your father had when he decided to take down dangerous men, regardless of the cost. Vance met her gaze. And because you deserve to know the truth about what happened to him. Daniel Blackwood died trying to stop weapons from reaching criminals. Now you have a chance to finish what he started. What do you want from me? Evidence, the kind that'll stand up in federal court. The kind that'll put Kane away for the rest of his life. Vance pulled out a business card, handed it to her. When you have it, call me. I'll make sure it gets to the right people. People outside military channels. People Kane can't intimidate or buy off. Kenna took the card, looked at the folder again, at her father's face in one of the photos, smiling, alive, unaware that he had maybe weeks left to live. He talked about you, Vance said quietly. Said his daughter was going to do important things. Said you had his courage and your mother's wisdom. He'd be proud of who you became. Something broke inside Kenna's chest. She'd spent 11 years wondering if her father would be proud. 11 years pushing herself harder, climbing higher, becoming stronger, all to live up to a memory she couldn't quite touch. Thank you, she managed. Don't thank me yet, Lieutenant. What you're about to do, going after a general, it'll cost you, maybe everything. Make sure you're willing to pay that price before you commit. Kenna thought about Kyle Brennan, killed in an ambush that should never have happened. About the $47 million in weapons now in Taliban hands. About American soldiers dying from equipment their own general had sold to the enemy. About her father, killed for trying to stop this exact thing 15 years ago. I'm willing, she said. Vance nodded, climbed into his Humvee. Before driving away, he looked back at her one last time. Your father died fighting the good fight, Lieutenant. Make sure his daughter survives it. Back in her quarters, Kenna spread the folder's contents across her bunk. Birth certificates, death certificate, official, declaring Daniel Blackwood deceased after 7 years missing. FBI investigation notes, photos of Kane from 1996, when he'd been a captain at Fort Carson. Younger, but the same cold eyes, the same calculating expression, everything connected. The weapons trafficking her father had died investigating. Kane's involvement back then, his current operation in Afghanistan. The pattern repeated across 15 years, 2 continents, countless deaths. This wasn't just about stopping an arms dealer. This was about justice for every person Kane had killed or gotten killed, including Daniel Blackwood. 48 hours until she met with Holt again. 48 hours to turn rage into strategy. 48 hours to plan an operation that would either end her career or end Kane's. She pulled out the encrypted phone, composed a message to Commander Granger. Need 3 people I can trust. Tomorrow night, same place as before. The reply came 30 minutes later. They'll be there. The next evening, Kenna made her midnight run for the 3rd time. The guards' patterns hadn't changed. She was beginning to feel insulted by the lack of challenge. The motor pool maintenance shed was crowded when she arrived. Holt stood against the back wall, flanked by 4 Marines she didn't recognize. Commander Granger waited near the door with 3 SEALs Kenna knew well. Chief Petty Officer Dax Garrett, 36 years old, heavy weapons specialist, built like a bear, thought like a chess master. They'd done 2 deployments together, saved each other's lives more times than either of them counted. Petty Officer First Class Reese Sullivan, 29, intelligence specialist, could hack any system, crack any code, find information that didn't want to be found, look like a college professor, fought like a demon. Petty Officer Second Class Fallon Wright, 25, the baby of the team, but don't let that fool you. Communications expert, tech genius, and probably smarter than everyone else in the room combined. Kenna had trained with all 3, trusted them with her life, hoped they were willing to trust her with their careers. "Thanks for coming," she said. Dax crossed his arms. "Commander Granger said you've got something. Better be good, Reaper. I was winning at poker." "It's not good. It's bad. Really bad." Kenna pulled out Holt's laptop, opened the files. "General Kane is selling weapons to the Taliban. Has been for 18 months. We're talking $47 million worth of equipment. Equipment that's being used to kill Americans." The room went silent. She showed them the photos, the videos, the serial number tracking, the financial records. Watched their faces shift from skepticism to shock to cold rage. "That son of a bitch," Dax breathed. "There's a convoy operation in 2 days," Kenna continued. "Another weapons transfer. We're going to document it, get evidence solid enough to bring federal charges, and we're going to do it without compromising the mission or getting ourselves killed. We're also going to do it while violating approximately 47 military regulations," Granger added. "This is not an authorized operation. This is not an official investigation. If you get caught, I can't protect you. You'll face court-martial, possible prison time. Your careers will be over." "So why are we here?" Fallon asked. "Because we're SEALs," Reese said quietly, "and SEALs don't let traitors get away with killing Americans." Kenna looked at Holt. "Tell them about your team." Holt introduced his Marines. Sergeant Knox Whitmore, scout sniper, could shoot the wings off a fly at 1,000 yards. Corporal Ronan Pierce, demolitions expert, the kind of guy you wanted around when things needed to explode or when explosions needed to stop. And 2 others, Sergeant Wade Thorne and Corporal Colby Nash, both infantry, both solid, both willing to risk everything for what was right. "Here's the plan," Kenna said. She pulled out a map, spread it across the workbench. "The convoy leaves Camp Leatherneck at 0600 on the 18th. Official destination is FOB Jackson, 60 miles northeast. We'll follow off-road out of visual range. Knox and I will take the lead vehicle with long-range optics. Dax and Ronan in the second vehicle with heavy weapons in case things go bad. Everyone else provides support and electronic surveillance." "What about the court-martial?" one of Holt's Marines asked. "You're confined to quarters. How are you getting out?" "I'm not confined to quarters. I'm documented as confined to quarters. There's a difference." Kenna looked at Fallon. "Think you can hack the guard schedule? Create a 12-hour window where it looks like I'm being monitored, but actually isn't?" Fallon grinned. "Please. I can make the system think you never left your bunk." "Kane will have counter-surveillance on the convoy," Holt warned. "Draven's team knows fieldcraft. They'll be watching for tails. Then we stay far enough back that we're invisible," Knox said. 3,000 yards minimum. At that range, we can observe them with spotting scopes, but they can't see us even with binocs." "Communications?" Granger asked. "Short-range encrypted burst transmissions only," Reese said. "No sustained signals they can track. We'll maintain radio silence unless absolutely necessary." They spent the next 2 hours planning every detail: routes, equipment, fallback positions, what to do if they were spotted, what to do if the operation went sideways, what to do if someone got killed, because there was a very real chance someone would get killed. "One more thing," Kenna said. "FBI is involved. Agent Marcus Vance. He knew my father. He's been tracking Kane for 15 years. When we get the evidence, it goes to him, not to military channels, not to anyone Kane can influence, straight to federal law enforcement. Your father? Dax looked at her. I thought he died in a hiking accident. He was murdered, Kenna said. The words came out flat and hard. By Kane, or on Kane's orders. 15 years ago, when my father was helping the FBI investigate weapons trafficking, Kane was involved then too. This isn't just about stopping him. This is about making sure he answers for everyone he's killed, including Daniel Blackwood. The room was quiet for a long moment. Then Dax stepped forward, put his hand on her shoulder. We're with you, Reaper, all the way. One by one, the others nodded. SEALs and Marines, different branches, different training, different cultures, but united by a simple truth. Traitors didn't deserve to wear the uniform, and traitors definitely didn't deserve to keep breathing. September 18th, Kenna said, 0530 hours. We meet at the North Perimeter, access road by the water tower. Come prepared for a long day in hostile territory. Come prepared for contact, and come prepared to document everything. What if Kane changes the schedule? One of the Marines asked. Then we adapt, but he won't change it. He's kept me isolated, confined, facing court-martial. In his mind, I'm neutralized. He has no reason to suspect I'm planning anything. Kenna looked around the room. Everyone understand the risks? They all nodded. Then let's go stop a general. The meeting broke up, everyone slipping away in different directions to avoid being seen together. Kenna was the last to leave. Commander Granger stopped her at the door. I read Agent Vance's file on your father, he said quietly. I'm sorry, Reaper. No one should have to learn that way. It explains a lot. Why I never believed the official story. Why I always felt like something was wrong. Kenna looked up at him. Thank you for this, sir, for letting me finish what he started. I'm not letting you do anything. Officially, I know nothing about any of this. Unofficially? Granger's expression hardened. Your father was trying to protect people. So are you. That's what SEALs do. We protect, even when it costs us everything. Back in her quarters, Kenna couldn't sleep. Her mind kept circling back to her father, to memories she tried to bury for 11 years. His laugh, the way he'd taught her to read animal tracks in snow, how he'd always seemed to know when she was lying, even about small things, how he'd hugged her goodbye that last time, holding on just a second longer than usual. Like some part of him knew he wasn't coming back. She pulled out the photo from Agent Vance's folder. Her father standing in front of his ranger station, 38 years old, in his prime. He looked happy, confident, like a man who'd found his purpose and was living it fully. I'm going to finish this, Dad, she whispered to the photo. I'm going to make Kane pay for what he did to you. I promise. The next 2 days dragged like weeks. Kenna maintained her cover, stayed in her quarters, acted like a properly confined officer awaiting court-martial. She reviewed the evidence until she could recite it from memory, studied maps until she knew every hill, every valley, every possible position along the convoy route. At night, she trained in her room. Push-ups, sit-ups, isometric exercises that wouldn't make noise, keeping her body sharp, her mind sharper, her resolve hardest of all. September 17th arrived, 24 hours until the operation. Kenna spent the day in meditation, the way she'd learned during SEAL training, controlling her breathing, quieting her thoughts, preparing mentally for what was coming. At 2300 hours, Fallon Wright's hack went live. The guard schedule system showed Kenna Blackwood in her quarters, sleeping peacefully, monitored continuously. In reality, the monitoring system was showing a looped video from 2 nights ago. Kenna gathered her gear, black tactical clothing, night vision goggles, her Sig Sauer P226, liberated from the armory by Reese Sullivan in an infiltration that would have made their instructors proud. Extra magazines, knife, medical kit, the encrypted phone, Agent Vance's card, everything she needed to document a general's treason or die trying. She slipped out at 23:15. The guard was nowhere to be seen. Fallon had rerouted him to a fake emergency on the other side of the base. Kenna crossed Camp Leatherneck one last time as a free woman, because after tomorrow, she'd either be vindicated or court-martialed. No middle ground, no safety net, just the mission and the price you paid to complete it. At the Water Tower Access Road, two vehicles waited. Modified Humvees, stripped of unit markings, equipped with civilian GPS and encrypted communications. Holt stood between them, checking his gear with the methodical precision of a man who'd done this 1,000 times. "Everyone's here," he said when Kenna arrived. "Knox and Dax are doing final weapons checks. Fallon's got the surveillance equipment running. We're ready." Kenna looked at the assembled team, SEALs and Marines, brothers and sisters in arms, all of them risking everything because they believed in something bigger than themselves. "Thank you," she said, "all of you, for believing me, for trusting me, for being willing to face a general to protect the people who can't protect themselves." "That's what we signed up for," Dax said, "to face the enemies of America. Doesn't matter if they're wearing suicide vests or dress uniforms." The team loaded up. Kenna rode with Knox Whitmore, the Marine sniper. They'd sync their spotting scopes, provide overlapping coverage of the convoy. Behind them, Dax and Ronan had heavy weapons, M249 SAW and AT-4 rocket launcher, just in case Kane's people decided to eliminate witnesses. At 05:30, exactly on schedule, engines turned over. They rolled out into the desert, headlights dark, navigating by moonlight and night vision. Somewhere ahead, General Thaddeus Kane was preparing to sell American weapons to the Taliban, and Lieutenant Kenna Blackwood was coming to stop him. With evidence, with witnesses, with federal law enforcement ready to act, and if necessary, with violence of action that would make her father proud. The hunt had begun. The convoy rolled out of Camp Leatherneck at 0600 exactly. 6 vehicles, 4 MRAPs for security, 2 heavy transport trucks carrying ammunition crates marked for Forward Operating Base Jackson. From 3,000 yards away, through Knox Whitmore's spotting scope, Kenna watched Staff Sergeant Colt Draven climb into the lead MRAP. "Visual confirmed," Knox said. "Draven's running point. I count 12 Marines total, plus the drivers." Kenna adjusted her own scope, scanning the convoy. Standard formation, nothing unusual. Exactly what you'd expect for a routine supply run through hostile territory. Except this run wasn't routine, and those supplies weren't going where the manifest claimed. "They're moving," Dax's voice crackled over the encrypted radio from the second vehicle. "We've got them on thermal, heading northeast on Route Dover." "Copy," Kenna replied. "Maintain 3,000 yards separation. Radio silence unless emergency." The 2 Humvees followed at distance, navigating off-road through terrain that looked like the surface of Mars. Red sand, rocky outcroppings, wadis that could hide vehicles or swallow them whole. The kind of country where you could lose an army if you weren't careful, or conduct illegal weapons transfers without anyone noticing. They drove for 90 minutes, the convoy maintaining steady progress along the official route. Kenna tracked them continuously, her scope never wavering, her mind cataloging every detail. At 0730, the convoy reached the turnoff for FOB Jackson and drove straight past it. "They're deviating from planned route," Knox said. "Heading northwest now, away from any friendly positions." "This is it," Kenna breathed. "They're making the handoff." She keyed the radio. "All units, convoy has left official route. We are now following hostile operation. Weapons tight unless fired upon. Document everything." In the second Humvee, Fallon Wright activated recording equipment, multiple cameras, audio surveillance gear, GPS tracking that would timestamp and geolocate every piece of evidence, the kind of documentation that would stand up in federal court. The convoy drove deeper into the wasteland. 40 minutes, 50. Terrain got rougher, more isolated. No villages, no farms. Nothing but desert that looked like God had forgotten it existed. At 0815, the convoy stopped in a valley surrounded by low hills. Natural amphitheater. Good visibility in all directions. Smart choice for a clandestine meeting. Set up observation post, Kenna ordered. Knox, you're with me. Everyone else, defensive perimeter. She and Knox crept to the ridgeline, staying low, using rocks for cover. Below them, maybe 1,500 yards away, Marines were unloading the transport trucks, crates stamped with military markings, ammunition, women, equipment that was supposed to be defending American interests. I've got movement from the north, Knox said. 3 vehicles incoming, Toyota Hilux pickups, civilian pattern. Through her scope, Kenna watched the pickups enter the valley. They stopped 50 yards from the convoy. Men climbed out, not Taliban fighters. These guys wore clean clothes, moved with confidence, carried themselves like businessmen rather than insurgents. Those aren't Taliban, she said. No, Knox agreed. Those are middlemen, brokers. The Taliban doesn't buy direct, too risky. They use intermediaries who handle the money and logistics. Smart, it gave everyone plausible deniability. The Marines could claim they didn't know who the buyers really were. The brokers could claim they were just facilitating trade. The Taliban stayed completely out of the picture until the weapons arrived in their hands. A 4th vehicle arrived. Black SUV. Expensive. Completely out of place in the Afghan desert. When the door opened, General Thaddeus Kane stepped out. Son of a bitch, Kenna whispered. He's here personally. That's our evidence, Knox said. General officer at an illegal weapons transfer. That's game over for him. Fallon's voice came over the radio. All cameras recording. I'm getting audio too. Range is extreme, but the directional mic is picking up conversation. Below, Kane walked toward the brokers, shook hands, smiled like they were old friends meeting for lunch. Draven supervised the cargo transfer, his Marines moving crates from military trucks to civilian pickups with practiced efficiency. How many times have they done this? Knox muttered. Look at them. This is routine for them. Kenna zoomed her scope, focusing on the crates, reading serial numbers, memorizing markings. Every detail was evidence. Every frame of video was another nail in Kane's coffin. One of the brokers opened a large metal case. Even from 1,500 yards, Kenna could see it was packed with cash. U.S. currency, probably hundreds of thousands of dollars. They're paying him, she said, right there in the open. They're not even trying to hide it. Why would they? Knox replied. They think they're in the middle of nowhere. They think nobody's watching. For 30 minutes, the transfer continued. Weapons out, money in, handshakes and conversation. Kane inspecting the cash like a merchant checking goods at market. The whole operation ran with the smooth efficiency of a well-oiled machine, which meant they'd done this dozens of times before. Reaper, we've got a problem. Dax's voice carried tension. Thermal imaging shows 2 vehicles approaching from the east. Fast movers. They're not part of the convoy. Kenna swung her scope east. 2 pickups racing across the desert, throwing dust plumes 50 feet high. As they got closer, she could see men in the truck beds. Armed men. Taliban fighters, judging by their appearance and weapons. Those aren't brokers, she said. Those are buyers. They're not supposed to be here, Knox said. This is supposed to be a clean handoff. Brokers only. The Taliban showing up puts everyone at risk. Below in the valley, Kane had seen them too. He was shouting at the brokers, gesturing angrily. The brokers looked panicked. This wasn't part of the plan. The Taliban pickups skidded to a stop. 20 fighters dismounted, AK-47s at the ready. Their leader walked forward, an older man with a gray beard and the bearing of someone accustomed to command. That's Assad Khalik, Knox said. Taliban commander, runs operations in Helmand province. Intel says he's responsible for at least 40 American casualties in the last year. Kenna felt ice settle in her stomach. This wasn't just an illegal weapons transfer anymore. This was direct collaboration with a Taliban commander who'd killed American soldiers. Khalik and Kane faced each other across 20 feet of sand. Even without audio, their body language told the story. Khalik was angry. Kane was defensive. The brokers were trying to mediate. Draven's Marines had weapons ready, but didn't seem sure who they should be pointing them at. "Fallon, please tell me you're getting this," Kenna said. "Every second. Audio's crystal clear now that Khalik's here." "You want the highlight reel? Give it to me." Fallon patched through the directional mic feed. Voices crackled over the radio, accented English mixing with Pashto translations. Khalik's voice, rough and commanding. "You promised me American night vision equipment. These crates contain only rifles and ammunition." Kane's voice, trying to maintain authority. "The night vision gear was too risky, too easily tracked. This is what I could move without raising flags." "Without raising flags? You charge me premium prices for basic weapons any arms dealer can provide. I want what I paid for. You'll get it. Next month. I need more time to. I am done waiting, and I am done paying your inflated prices." Khalik's tone hardened. "Perhaps I should inform your superiors about our arrangement. See what they think of their general selling weapons to his enemies. You do that, and you lose your supply line. We both lose. Or perhaps I simply take what I want, right now." The Taliban fighters raised their weapons. Draven's Marines did the same. Suddenly, 30 men stood in a valley pointing guns at each other, and Kenna realized this situation was about to deteriorate catastrophically. "Knox, what's our shot?" The sniper was already calculating. "Wind 3 miles per hour from the west. Temperature 92 degrees. Range 1,500 yards. I can take Khalik. Maybe 2 others before they scatter." "No, we're here to document, not engage." Kenna keyed the radio. "All units prepare for possible extraction under fire. If shooting starts, we cannot get involved. Our mission is evidence, not combat." But even as she said it, she knew it was a lie. If Kane's Marines started dying, she couldn't just watch. SEAL or not, mission or not, those were Americans down there. In the valley, Kane was talking fast now, trying to de-escalate. "Khalik, be reasonable. Killing me accomplishes nothing. You need someone inside American supply chains. I'm your only contact. You were useful once. Now you are liability." Khalik gestured to his fighters. "Take the general. He will be worth more as hostage than as supplier." Taliban fighters moved toward Kane. Draven's Marines stepped between them. For a moment, everyone froze, fingers on triggers. One wrong move from a firefight that would leave bodies scattered across the sand. Then Kane did something Kenna didn't expect. He pulled a radio from his belt, spoke into it. "Execute Crimson Thunder, now." "What's Crimson Thunder?" Knox asked. They got their answer 10 seconds later. From the north, from the south, from positions Kenna hadn't spotted, automatic weapons fire erupted. Heavy machine guns, M240 Bravos by the sound. Taliban fighters went down screaming, caught in a crossfire they never saw coming. "Ambush," Kenna said. "Kane set up an ambush." "But for who?" Knox said. "The Taliban or us?" The answer came when one of the machine gun positions swung its barrel toward the ridgeline where Kenna and Knox lay hidden. Tracers arced through the air, impacting 50 yards below their position. "They made us," Knox said. "Time to go." They scrambled backward off the ridge, bullets chewing rock where they'd been seconds before. Kenna hit the radio. "All units, we are compromised. Fall back to vehicles. Go, go, go." She and Knox sprinted for their Humvee, Knox firing suppressing bursts from his M4 as they ran. Behind them, the ridgeline exploded in dust and rock fragments as heavy machine guns tried to pin them down. They dove into the Humvee. Knox floored it, engine roaring, tires spitting sand. From the second vehicle, Dax's M249 opened up, laying covering fire to buy them time. "Sit rep," Kenna shouted into the radio. Taking fire from multiple positions, Dax replied. They've got us bracketed. These aren't Taliban shooters. This is professional, military, coordinated fire. Because it was. Kane had positioned his own people in Overwatch, just in case anyone tried to observe his operation. The whole setup had been a trap within a trap. Head east, Kenna ordered. Toward that Wadi network. We need cover. The Humvees raced across open ground, machine gun fire tracking them, bullets punching through sheet metal and shattering windows. Knox drove with one hand, fired his M4 out the window with the other, the vehicle swerving wildly as he tried to make them a harder target. They reached the Wadi and plunged into it, the steep banks providing blessed cover from the automatic weapons fire. The shooting diminished as they put terrain between themselves and the ambush positions. Casualties? Kenna asked. Ronan took a round in the shoulder, Holt reported from the second vehicle. He's conscious, bleeding controlled. Everyone else is good. Equipment? Cameras damaged, but the hard drives are intact. We got everything up until they started shooting, which meant they had it all. Kane, Khalik, the weapons transfer, the money, the conversation. Everything needed to prove treason and conspiracy with enemy combatants. Where do we go now? Knox asked. Back to Leatherneck? Negative. Kenna pulled out Agent Vance's card. We go to the FBI. Kane will have people waiting for us at every military facility. We need to get this evidence to federal authorities before he can intercept us. She dialed the number on the card. It rang once before Vance answered. Agent Vance, this is Lieutenant Blackwood. I've got the evidence, all of it. General Kane conducting weapons transfers to Taliban brokers. Video, audio, eyewitness testimony, but he knows we have it and he's trying to kill us. Where are you? Kenna checked the GPS. Approximately 40 miles northwest of Camp Leatherneck, taking fire from hostile forces. One casualty, vehicle damaged but mobile. There's a Marine outpost 20 miles north of your position. Checkpoint Sierra. Small unit, just a dozen guys. I can have FBI helicopters meet you there in 90 minutes. Can you make it? We'll make it. Lieutenant, Kane is dangerous. He's going to throw everything he has at stopping you from reaching federal custody. Trust no one in uniform until you're with my people. Understood? Understood. She relayed the plan to both vehicles. They turned north, navigating through the Wadi network, using the terrain to shield them from observation. Behind them, she could hear engines, vehicles pursuing. Kane wasn't giving up. They drove hard for 30 minutes, pushing the Humvees to their limits, sacrificing stealth for speed. The landscape blurred past, endless sand and rock broken only by the occasional cluster of mud brick buildings or scraggly tree. At 0940, Knox pointed ahead. I've got Checkpoint Sierra, small compound, HESCO barriers, radio tower. Looks quiet. Too quiet, Kenna thought. But they didn't have a choice. They needed that extraction. The Humvees rolled up to the checkpoint's main gate. A Marine corporal emerged from the guard shack, looking confused at the sight of two shot-up vehicles with no unit markings. Who the hell are you? He asked. Kenna climbed out, hands visible, moving slowly so she didn't spook a nervous Marine with an M4. Lieutenant Kenna Blackwood, SEAL Team 8. We need immediate assistance. Federal authorities are en route for emergency extraction. The corporal's confusion deepened. Ma'am, I haven't received any notification about... You wouldn't. This is a federal operation outside military channels. Just let us inside the perimeter. FBI helicopters will be here in less than an hour. The corporal looked at the bullet holes in the Humvees. At Ronan Pierce sitting in the second vehicle's passenger seat with blood soaking his shoulder. At the grim, determined faces of SEALs and Marines who looked like they'd just been through a war. Yes, ma'am. Come on in. They pulled inside the compound. 20 Marines stationed here, just like Vance had said. Small outpost, minimal facilities, but it had walls and a defendable perimeter. More importantly, it had communications equipment Fallon could use to contact the FBI directly. Kenna gathered her team in the communications shack. We hold here until extraction arrives. Dax, set up defensive positions. Knox, you and the other snipers get on those walls. Watch for incoming vehicles. Fallon, get me a secure line to Agent Vance. They moved with practiced efficiency, each person knowing their role, executing without question. This was what training bought you, the ability to function under pressure, to maintain discipline when everything was falling apart. Ronan Pierce sat against a wall while one of the checkpoint's corpsmen treated his shoulder wound. "How bad?" Kenna asked. "Through and through," the corpsman replied. "Missed bone and major vessels. He'll need surgery eventually, but he's stable." "I'm fine," Ronan said through gritted teeth. "Worry about the mission, not me." Fallon got the secure line established. Agent Vance's voice came through clear and steady. "Lieutenant, FBI tactical team is en route. ETA 50 minutes. Can you hold that long?" "We can hold." "Good, because you're about to have company. Military intelligence intercepts show General Kane mobilizing a reaction force. He's claiming you're terrorists who attacked an American convoy. He's got authorization to use lethal force." Kenna felt cold settle into her bones. "He's framing us." "He's trying to, but once you're in FBI custody, his narrative falls apart. You just have to survive long enough to get there." "We'll survive." She hoped she sounded more confident than she felt. 20 minutes later, Dax called from the wall. "Vehicles approaching from the south. Multiple contacts. Looks like a full platoon." Kenna climbed the HESCO barrier, raised her binoculars. 6 vehicles, heavily armed, moving fast. In the lead vehicle, she could make out a familiar profile. Staff Sergeant Colt Draven. "They're here," she said. The convoy stopped 500 yards out. Draven emerged using a loudspeaker. His voice carried across the desert, amplified and distorted. "This is Staff Sergeant Draven, 2nd Battalion, 7th Marines. We are responding to a terrorist attack on American forces. Surrender the individuals inside that compound immediately, or we will take it by force." The checkpoint's commanding officer, a young lieutenant named Pearson, looked at Kenna with growing alarm. "Ma'am, what the hell is going on?" "That man out there is part of a weapons trafficking ring run by General Kane. We have evidence of treason and conspiracy with the Taliban. They're trying to stop us from reaching federal authorities." "That's insane. General Kane is a traitor." Kenna met his eyes. "And if you hand us over, you're complicit in his crimes. The FBI is en route. All we need is 30 more minutes." Pearson looked at his Marines, at the convoy outside, at Kenna and her team, battered and bloody but standing firm. She could see him trying to process information that contradicted everything his training had taught him about chain of command and trusting superior officers. "Prove it," he said finally. "Prove Kane is dirty." Kenna pulled out the laptop, showed him the video. Kane shaking hands with weapons brokers, the money changing hands, the conversation with Khalik. All of it time-stamped and geolocated. Pearson's face went pale. "Jesus Christ. So you understand, we're not terrorists, we're trying to stop one." Draven's voice came again. "You have 5 minutes to comply. After that, we're coming in." Pearson grabbed his radio. "All Marines, defensive positions. Nobody gets through that gate without my authorization." His dozen Marines scrambled to the walls, weapons ready, facing off against Draven's platoon. 30 against 12. Not good odds. "They'll cut through your people in minutes," Kenna said. "But they won't. Not with witnesses. Draven knows if he kills Marines to cover up Kane's crimes, there's no walking that back. So what do? We wait. And we make it very clear that if they attack, the whole world will know about it." Fallon was already setting up. Portable satellite uplink, video camera, direct feed to multiple news organizations and government agencies. "I'm streaming live," she said. "CNN, FBI, Pentagon, Department of Defense Inspector General. Everyone's watching now." Kenna took the camera, looked directly into the lens. "My name is Lieutenant Kenna Blackwood. United States Navy SEAL. I am being pursued by forces loyal to Major General Thaddeus Kane, who is attempting to silence evidence of his treason. Not everything. She was holding the complete files for the FBI, but enough to make sure Kane couldn't simply kill them and claim it never happened. Within minutes, her phone started ringing. News agencies, congressional offices, Pentagon press corps. The story was breaking in real time, spreading faster than Kane could contain it. Outside the compound, Draven's platoon remained stationary. He was probably on the radio with Kane, trying to figure out what to do now that their cover-up was being broadcast live to the world. FBI inbound, Fallon announced. Helicopters 10 minutes out. The longest 10 minutes of Kenna's life. At 0:10:55, she heard the distinctive sound of rotor blades. Two Black Hawks appeared from the north, flying fast and low. They circled the compound once, then landed inside the perimeter in clouds of dust and rotor wash. FBI tactical agents poured out, wearing body armor marked with bright yellow letters. Federal Agent. They established a perimeter, weapons ready, facing Draven's platoon with the authority of federal law enforcement. Agent Marcus Vance stepped out of the lead helicopter. He walked straight to Kenna, ignoring the dozens of weapons pointed in various directions. Lieutenant Blackwood, good to see you alive. Good to be alive, sir. You have the evidence? She handed him the laptop and the hard drives from Fallon's surveillance equipment. Everything. Kane conducting the transfer, payment in cash, conversation with Taliban Commander Khalik, $47 million in weapons over 18 months, serial numbers, dates, locations, enough to put him away for life. Vance looked at the files, his expression growing harder with each image. This is it. This is what we needed. He looked up at her. Your father would be proud. Kenna felt something break inside her chest. Relief, grief, victory, loss, all of it hitting at once after 3 days of running and fighting and barely surviving. Thank you, she managed. We need to go. My people will take you to a secure location for debriefing. Your team too. Everyone who witnessed this. Vance raised his voice, addressing the FBI agents. Prepare for departure. We've got multiple witnesses and evidence requiring immediate, secure transport. Kenna gathered her team. Everybody on the helicopters. This is over. They loaded up, battered and exhausted but alive. As the Black Hawks lifted off, Kenna looked down at Draven's platoon, still frozen in position, weapons lowered, knowing they'd lost. Somewhere in Camp Leatherneck, General Kane was watching his empire collapse in real time. His weapons network exposed, his Taliban connections documented, his treason broadcast to the world, and Lieutenant Kenna Blackwood was flying to safety with evidence that would destroy him. The debrief lasted 16 hours. FBI agents asking questions, clarifying details, cross-referencing evidence. They separated the team, interviewed everyone individually, made sure the stories matched. Standard procedure for building an airtight case. Kenna told them everything, from Holt's initial approach to the final firefight. Every conversation, every decision, every piece of evidence collected. She held nothing back. When they asked about her father, she told them that too. How she'd learned Daniel Blackwood was murdered. How Kane had been involved 15 years ago. How this investigation had become personal. That doesn't invalidate the evidence, one agent said, but defense attorneys will use it. They'll claim you fabricated everything out of revenge for your father. Let them try, Kenna replied. I've got video of Kane shaking hands with weapons brokers, audio of him negotiating with Taliban commanders. Financial records showing 47 million in illegal transfers. My personal motivation doesn't change those facts. 3 days after the extraction, formal charges were filed. Major General Thaddeus Kane was arrested at his quarters in Camp Leatherneck by FBI agents backed by military police. The charges read like a catalog of betrayal: conspiracy, treason, providing material support to terrorist organizations, murder for hire, obstruction of justice. Staff Sergeant Colt Draven and 11 other Marines were arrested simultaneously. The weapons trafficking network collapsed as arrests spread across 3 continents. Kenna and her team were cleared of all charges. The Article 32 hearing Captain Winters had scheduled never happened. Instead, Kenna received a formal apology from the Secretary of the Navy and a promise that the service would review its procedures for handling allegations against senior officers. 2 weeks later, she stood in a federal courthouse in Virginia, watching General Kane's arraignment. He appeared in civilian clothes, his military career already over, his uniform stripped away the moment charges were filed. He looked smaller somehow, less imposing. Just a man who'd made terrible choices and was finally facing consequences. Their eyes met across the courtroom. Kane's expression held no remorse, no regret, just cold calculation, still trying to find an angle, still looking for a way out. Kenna held his gaze until he looked away. The trial lasted 7 weeks. Federal prosecutors presented overwhelming evidence: video, audio, financial records, testimony from 40 witnesses including Kenna and her team. The defense tried everything, claimed entrapment, questioned evidence authenticity, attacked witness credibility. None of it worked. The jury deliberated for 4 hours, found Kane guilty on all counts. The judge sentenced him to life in federal prison without possibility of parole. As marshals led him away, Kane looked at Kenna one last time. She expected hatred. Instead, she saw something that might have been respect: the acknowledgement that she'd beaten him, that Daniel Blackwood's daughter had finished what her father started. Then he was gone, and Kenna finally allowed herself to breathe. 6 months after Kane's conviction, Kenna stood in Montana, at the trailhead where her father's truck had been found 11 years earlier. The case had been officially reopened, reclassified as homicide. Kane had admitted to ordering Daniel Blackwood's death as part of a plea deal that spared him the death penalty. They'd found her father's remains 3 miles from the original search area, buried in a location only someone with Kane's intelligence access could have known about. Daniel Blackwood had been shot twice. Quick, professional, then buried and forgotten, until his daughter refused to let him stay forgotten. The funeral was small: military honors, 21-gun salute, a flag folded and presented to Kenna by an honor guard who'd never known the man but respected what he'd stood for. Agent Vance attended, Commander Granger, Dax, Reese, and Fallon in their dress uniforms, Gunnery Sergeant Holt, and the Marines who'd risked everything to expose the truth. After the ceremony, Kenna stood alone at the grave. The headstone read, "Daniel Blackwood, loving father, American hero, 1961 to 1996. "I did it, Dad," she said quietly. "Kane's in prison. The weapons network is destroyed. Everyone who helped him is facing justice. And your name is cleared. The FBI formally recognized you as a confidential informant who died in service to your country. You're being honored." The wind moved through the Montana pines, the sound like whispered conversation. Kenna imagined her father's response. Probably something about how she'd taken too many risks, how she should have been more careful, how he was proud of her anyway. "I'm staying in the Navy," she continued. "They offered me early promotion to lieutenant commander, assignment to DevGru's training cadre. I'll be teaching the next generation of SEALs, making sure they understand that honor matters, that integrity matters, that some fights are worth everything." She placed her hand on the cold granite. "I love you, Dad. I always will, and I promise I'll keep fighting the good fight. For you, for everyone who can't fight for themselves. That's what Blackwoods do. 1 year after the trial, Kenna stood in front of a new class of SEAL candidates at Naval Amphibious Base Coronado. 86 men and 3 women, all of them about to begin the hardest training the military had to offer. Most would quit. Most would decide the price was too high, but some would make it. Some would become SEALs. And those were the ones Kenna needed to reach. "My name is Lieutenant Commander Kenna Blackwood," she said. "Call sign, Reaper." "Before we start, I want to tell you a story about what it really means to be a SEAL." She told them about General Kane, about the weapons network, about choosing between career and conscience, about the team that risked everything because it was the right thing to do. "Being a SEAL isn't about being the strongest or the toughest," she said. "It's about having the courage to stand up when everything tells you to stay down. It's about protecting people who can't protect themselves. And it's about understanding that the uniform you wear means something. Honor, integrity, sacrifice." She paused, looking at each face. "Some of you won't make it through training. That's okay. This isn't for everyone. But those of you who do make it, remember this story. Remember that your real enemy isn't always the one shooting at you. Sometimes it's the one wearing the same uniform. And when you face that enemy, you don't hesitate. You don't compromise. You do what's right, regardless of the cost." The candidate stood silent, processing her words. Then one young woman in the back raised her hand. "Ma'am, was it worth it? Risking your career, facing court-martial, everything you went through?" Kenna thought about her father, about Kyle Brennan and the others who died because of Kane's greed, about the American soldiers who were alive today because those weapons never reached Taliban hands. "Yes," she said simply, "it was worth it. It'll always be worth it." That evening, Kenna sat on Coronado Beach, watching the sun set over the Pacific. Her phone buzzed. Message from Agent Vance. Final tally, 47 officers arrested across 3 services. $280 million in illegal weapons transfers prevented. Taliban network disrupted. Your father's legacy honored. Well done, Lieutenant Commander. She typed a reply. Thank you for everything. Couldn't have done it without you. The response came immediately. You did the hard part. You stood up when no one else would. That's what heroes do. Kenna put the phone away. Watch the waves roll in, endless and eternal. Somewhere out there the war continued, but tonight, right now, she could rest, could know that she'd made a difference, that her father's death hadn't been meaningless, that Lieutenant Kenna Blackwood, daughter of Daniel Blackwood, had finished what he started. A figure approached along the beach. Dax Garrett, still in his fatigues, probably just off duty. He sat down beside her without asking permission. That was the thing about teammates who'd been through hell together. You didn't need to ask. Heard you gave the new class a hell of a speech, he said. Just telling them what they need to know. That honor matters? That honor is all that matters. Kenna looked at him. Without it, we're just people with guns. With it, we're warriors. There's a difference. Kane learned that difference the hard way. So did a lot of other people. Kenna drew a line in the sand with her finger. How many Americans are alive right now because we stopped that weapons network? 50? 100? We'll never know exactly, but they're alive. That's what matters. Dax was quiet for a moment. Your father would be proud. I hope so. Kenna erased the line, drew another. I spent 11 years wondering if I was good enough, strong enough, brave enough. Turns out I am. Turns out when it mattered most, I didn't back down. You never back down, Reaper. That's who you are. They sat in silence, watching the sun disappear below the horizon. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, new missions, new chances to prove that honor and integrity weren't just words. But tonight, Kenna Blackwood allowed herself something she hadn't felt in years. Peace. 3 years later, a documentary aired on network television. The General's Treason, How One SEAL Exposed Military Corruption. It told the whole story, from Kane's weapons network to Kenna's investigation to the final confrontation in the Afghan desert. The documentary won awards. sparked congressional hearings, led to reforms in military oversight and weapons accountability, inspired a generation of service members to understand that speaking truth to power wasn't just allowed, it was required. And in a small house in Montana, in a frame on the wall beside her father's photograph, Kenna kept a single image from that day in the Afghan desert. Not the confrontation with Cain, not the firefight or the extraction, just a photo of her team. SEALs and Marines, battered and bloody and exhausted, but standing, together, alive, because they'd chosen to fight for something bigger than themselves. And in the end, that's all that really mattered. Lieutenant Commander Kenna Reaper Blackwood went on to serve 12 more years, rose to commander, commanded her own SEAL team, deployed 6 more times to combat zones around the world, trained hundreds of new SEALs in the meaning of honor and the price of integrity. She never married, never had children, said she was married to the mission, and the mission would always be enough. But on quiet nights, when the weight of command felt heavy and the cost of leadership seemed too high, she would pull out that photo, look at her team, remember what they'd accomplished together, and she would hear her father's voice carried on the wind from Montana mountains. "That's my girl. That's my warrior. I'm proud of you." And Kenna would smile and know that everything, all the sacrifice, all the pain, all the cost had been worth it, because she'd kept her promise. She'd finished what her father started, and she'd done it with honor.